Good morning from the Florence School of Regulation. I'm here today with Leonardo Meeus, who is Associate Professor at the Vlerick Business School in Brussels and also part-time professor with us at Florence School of Regulation. So good morning, Leo. We are going to talk about a very controversial issue these days, the different role of DSOs against the role of TSOs in the evolving electricity market that we know is highly affected by a higher and higher penetration of renewable energy. So you recently wrote and published with us a very nice policy brief on trying to identify a regulatory framework for the future of DSOs. And you talk about many shades of grey. So can you tell us more? How dark is the grey? Is it light grey or very, very dark?
So what I presented this morning was on 3 types of activities. So the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, batteries, and the data hub operator. And the last one, I think, was most connected with the discussion on flexibility and renewables. And maybe we can come back to that later in the interview. But overall, I would agree with the poll that we also did this month at Florence School.
That was a very interesting one.
Mm-hmm. That it's grey. So even though some people think it's white or black, I think if you just look at what is happening on the ground in different countries, it's really grey. And some countries have already chosen to involve the DSOs. What that means, involvement of DSOs is also very different in different countries. And that's also what we try to do. We try to go beyond this discussion, involvement of DSO, yes or no, but rather to see how regulators are already dealing with the reality of DSO involvement, what is best practices, and how do they do that.
Oh, exactly. So starting from an observation of reality, what's the different landscape for very heterogeneous when it comes to DSOs. So you start from practices, it's very good, but how does regulation help? Is there already a framework? I heard this morning that something was already envisaged in the third package, but is it enough, or is it necessary an evolution from the regulatory point of view on this?
It's very interesting in this workshop that we were reminded with a few quotes from the third package that DSOs at that time were really not on the radar, in the European debate, which now today I think everybody agreed in the workshop is a bit strange. If you look at some passages of the abstracts from the third package, even not considering DSOs for congestion management, for instance, these are things that today I think most of us would agree that is something that DSOs should get involved in.
All of us, actually. I was quite surprised. This morning, everybody agreed that, yes, okay, that it's out of dated. We should make a next step, perhaps. So is there agreement? There's no controversy anymore on this. We all agree.
Then I think, as you have noticed, the devil is in the details, because what we discussed is, okay, these renewables and many of the new sources are connected to distribution grids. So maybe and that everybody agreed that there should be a role for aggregators and market parties to bring those resources to the TSO level, to balancing markets, to reserve markets. That everybody agreed. And then we started discussing also what does that mean for coordination between DSOs and TSOs. And there everybody can agree on some high-level principles like, yes, of course, if resources are being contracted at distribution level, there needs to be some pre-qualification, some involvement of DSOs. But when we get into the details of redispatching, for instance, where balancing. DSOs would maybe overrule decisions of TSOs, there you could feel that we still need some discussion. And then connected to our policy brief, there is also the elephant in the room.
An elephant in the room.
An elephant, yes, because I think DSOs and TSOs are more and more working together, but as long as the role of the data hub operator has not been assigned to a DSO or a TSO in a country, this remains, of course, something where they obviously disagree, where each of them feels that they can take up that role.
Of course, data is always tricky. It's really at the focus also of this debate, who should manage the data, how should this data be delivered, and what role innovation has in improving the way data is collected and so on. But switching to another feature in the discussion. We heard already this morning that flexibility is one of the magic words to be used in this work, to be addressed, at least as an issue. What's the flexibility challenge? Where does it lie? And you said this morning that in the flexibility challenge, the coordination between TSOs and DSOs is already part of the solution. What do you mean?
Well, as I tried to say before, if a TSO uses resources from the distribution level, maybe in the future or in some countries already today, that is not always possible, because a distribution grid also has its limits in a way. We don't want it to be oversized, so we're going to run it more and more at the margin, I would say. And that means that also we need some system where DSOs can signal congestion in their grid, and that is somehow taken into account in the whole procedure. And as we said in the discussion, it means sometimes we will have a kind of overruling or extra procedures needed in exceptional cases. Then the question is if these exceptional cases will become more let's say, common.
Less exceptional.
Then we are in the next step. And that is something we were also discussing, that most of the solutions we see today are in a transition phase. If we would really go all the way in this decentralization, maybe we need even more integration of the decentralized story into the centralized story. But I thought everybody in the room was saying that's a topic of R&D for the moment. And we had some representatives of European projects in the room, and they will look at that, and I'm sure we will look at these different options.
Absolutely. That looks like it's still too early to go too much into details, but of course the decentralization is one of the possible scenarios. We will see which direction the market or even the regulation takes in the next year. So thank you very much. We are sure that you will have a lot of material for continuing your work, your research, and of course we will be here to keep on discussing on these issues. Thank you very much, Leo.
Pleasure.